Age of the Primes, Alchemist Prime was probably the member of the 13 that I was least anticipating on release. Well, I've got nothing against the character or the design, but out of the rest of the Primes that we saw alongside him, he was definitely the most dull. I mean, come on, we saw this thing for the first time the same day we saw Onyx. He wasn't going to be the star of the show. But now that I actually have him in hand and I'm taking a look at him in the review space, how does he fare? Well, let's take a look at him and find out. The sculpted detail and proportions on this guy are actually pretty great. The product images of this guy kind of made him look a little bit flat and bland, but in hand, he's got so much surface detailing. Not only are there lots of really nice details and panel lines across this guy, but all of them are kind of staggered and three-dimensional. Gives him a really great look. He even makes elements that could end up looking a little generic his own by having very distinctive shapes. I think the particular elements I'm looking at here are the feet, the thighs, and the shoulders. This combination of extremely round and extremely wide and flat detailing is just quite distinct, and he wears it with pride. But I think my favorite areas of the sculpt on this guy are definitely the chest and head. There's so much personality and life in these elements. There's parts here that kind of loosely resemble an ab grill or headlights or little vent details, and it makes you wonder what he could transform into. Unfortunately, they don't come into play in that mode, but we'll get to that later. But it does make him kind of feel ancestral. You can definitely see the roots of what came after this guy and what got more refined with time. It's a neat look. And of course, the Van Dyke glasses combination is just on point. I love this head sculpt so much. The only aspect of the look of this guy that I actually dislike is just the deco, but it is only a minor qualm. Because the actual quality of the deco here is really nice. The plastics are a really nice set of vibrant shades. Not necessarily metallic, but there is a shininess to it. And the paint is absolutely gorgeous, with all these pale silver and gold accents applied really nicely. Now, instead my main issue is the fact that the green just feels a little bit bland next to the rest of the primes. The rest of them are all really distinct and vibrant, but this one's just kinda dark swamp green. And what makes matters worse is there is another largely green prime about this size coming out pretty soon. Maybe a shade kinda like Legacy Cosmos would have worked a little bit better, just a bit more vibrant, but ideally, I just wish this guy could have been teal, come on. This panel right here, if he'd have pulled these colors, I would have been much happier. But as is, this guy just kinda blends into the dark spots. Real shame. However, it doesn't make me dislike the look of this guy. I wish it could have been slightly different just so he could stand out a little bit more, but individually, the sculpt is fantastic, and the deco is very clean. He is a very nice looking figure. I just wish that for a character that stood in a group, that he stood out from that group a little bit more. Fortunately though, he is pretty fun to mess with. Accessory wise, he comes with these two little things. They're kind of blade gun things. I'm really not sure what to call these things, but they're really well sculpted. But you can use these two connections to tab them together into the lenses. And that is a very nifty accessory. It's even got his Prime crest on there. And they're lovely. Now when they're combined, you can only hold them out in front of him like so, but you can split them apart and use them just like regular weapons if you wanted to. I have seen a lot of people mount them on the arms to give them a little pop of color, but I'm really not sure how I feel about that. I suppose it works for display. But I do think they just look better when they're combined. Which is a shame, because it's kinda limited how he can hold these things, considering his poseability isn't amazing. Well, the poseability aside from the head, this is a really good ball joint. There's already a lot of wiggle room on this thing, but there's a hinge at the base of the neck that means he can look further down and side to side. Very expressive. The shoulders move out pretty standardly and go all the way around. There's bicep swivels, standard elbows, nothing at the wrists, but you do get a waist. The hips move out, forward, and back pretty standardly. There's thigh swivels, standard knees, and pretty decent ankle pivots. Look, generally speaking, the posing here is pretty good. Nothing's necessarily limited, everything's fairly average. It's nice that he actually has a waist swivel. I was starting to miss those after the last couple of reviews. The main problem that I have with this guy is just the lack of wrists. Considering the fact that he has a two-handed accessory, it really limits how he can pose with it. As much as people dislike that thing, although I love it, I don't get the hate, I'd point to Solus as an example of how this could have been done better. Some ball joints at the wrists would have meant he could have posed with it in a lot more ways. But right now, it's either out in front of him or up above him. But at the very least, he is nice and solid, right? Oh, yeah, the joints across this guy are really nice and solid, but the transformation hinges on the sides of the torso, they just love to pop off. I really wish these could have been pinned, especially since it makes that transformation a little bit more of a chore than it has to be. Because the actual process itself isn't that bad. It's a lot of simple steps, but in a very specific order of operations that makes it a lot more enjoyable, at least once you've learned it properly. Those first couple of times I transformed it did have me a little bit worried. Just make sure that you mostly transform the legs and then move the arms into place and fold them down into it. It saves gives a big ol' headache. Although I will say it is a complete pain in the ass to get untapped. If you don't want to break your nails on it, I'd recommend getting a part separator to split the back half of the alt mode apart. That isn't hyperbole, I have snapped a nail doing this before. And yeah, the alt mode is pretty good for what it is, but forgive me, lore-wise, Alchemist is one of the only primes that we've seen have a transformation, at least as far as I know, and isn't it supposed to be into some kind of unknowable death machine? I'm not sure a minivan is an unknowable death machine. Oh well, if you can't transform into a Lovecraftian horror, a 4x4 is probably the next best thing. And the alt mode itself has some really nice details on it. I particularly love the color separation, that black stripe running along the bottom half that only extends to wrap around the windows where the rest of the body is green. Oh, that hits me nice. The clear windshield itself has some nice patterns molded onto it, and the surface detailing is just greebled enough that it does look like a Cybertronian vehicle. Although this is very much the shape of an Earth car. The only real issue I have with the look of it is just the fact that the hands stick out at this angle here. If you try and push them down, they just spring back. And I don't recommend trying to hold them down, as I have heard some breakage stories. Look, I'm gonna be perfectly honest, this alt mode doesn't have anything wrong with it, but I just don't particularly like it all that much. At the very least, I wish the front face of it could have had some of those surface details from the chest, but no, it's just a generic front end. There was such a good opportunity here to have a cool steampunk car like we have with Solus, but oh well, this is what we have, and it's fine, but I definitely find it bland. But at least it rolls alright, and you can store both of the accessories on the top. Looking at him with the rest of the 13 primes, or just generally with the other deluxe molds from Wave 1 and 2, I, broadly speaking, think this is probably the weakest mold. Solus definitely had some flaws, especially with the stability in the alt mode, but I had more fun with that than I do with this. But I think that is saying something, because I still really enjoy this thing. And honestly, despite all the criticisms I've had, they have been mostly personal ones, and broadly speaking, I would still recommend this to most collectors. If you're going in on the 13 primes, he's of course an essential pickup, but the way I see this guy, this is a toy of McAdam. Not the Prime himself. Just a jolly old mustachioed bartender living in neutral zones before the war. But that's just me. And if you like the way that this guy looks with the rest of the primes, then by all means, he is worthwhile. And if you agree, then feel free to leave a like, it'll help me out a lot. If you disagree, then leave a comment, tell me what you think of this guy. And be sure to subscribe for the next one. And for such a spooky day, we might as well have the thematically spookiest figure that I had on hand. I'm working with what I got here. And if you want to catch that early, then my Patreon is always an option, where you get early access, photo galleries, your name in the credits, the whole works. Right now though, I think I'm gonna go make a plate of nachos. Made a big batch of taco beef the other day and I've got a whole lot of leftovers, so gonna go enjoy that. Anyway, ciao.